Thank you for listening to the Walt Weekly with your host, Walter Latham Sr., and co-host, Michelle Sweeney McCombs. You can find us at www.thewaltweekly.com. On social media, Instagram, The Walt Weekly, Facebook, The Walt Weekly Podcast, Twitter, Walt Weekly, and Podbean, The Walt Weekly. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and other streaming platforms. Please like, follow, and share The Walt Weekly.
Yes, hello everyone and good evening. Thanks for joining the Walt Weekly Podcast Live Edition. My name is Walter Latham. I'm your host, and I'm joined by Michelle Sweeney McComb. On this show, we're going to take a different format. It's not going to be our normal format, and I'm getting some background noise.
Yes, if you're not speaking, put yourself on mute. You click the phone button, and it will put you on mute. You click the phone button again when you're ready to speak, and you can put yourself back off mute. Okay. Continue, Walter.
All right. Today's show is going to be a different format. It's basically going to be similar to what we call a town hall. All right. And it is on the political side of the spectrum. So with that said, the name of the show is it definitely time to turn the page? Dr. Maurice Franklin versus Charlie Rangel, among others, for male district leader in Harlem. So the upcoming primary in Harlem for male district leader is going to draw a lot of attention. It will pit an upcoming candidate, Dr. Maurice Franklin, against a field which will include, believe it or not, Charlie Rangel. Yes, the Charlie Rangel. So when the spotlight starts to shine, and it will, we'll see who will emerge a winner. And there will be I'm quite sure, other candidates in that field. And one of those may emerge as a winner. But in the meantime, it'll be Dr. Franklin against Charlie Rangel, believe it or not.
Yes.
So, with that said, I want to get on with this. And let's start. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle so that she could do her normal routine. And take it from there. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Walter. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Walt Weekly Friday Live, sponsored by Black-owned businesses, Beauty Blends by Ami, Soap and Love, and Michelle Sweeney here. Our intro and outro music is provided by Uncle Nephew. We have our esteemed weekly panel joining us. We have Gregory Coleman out of North Carolina, COO of Illumination Media and Technology and engineer at the Walt Weekly. We have Christopher Sweeney out of New Jersey, retired sanitation worker and CEO of Johnny Roof's catering service. We also have Ernest J. Robinson out of Washington, D.C., a Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, combat veteran, senior consultant at B. Ernest Leadership and Professional Consultant. We have Gene Edwards, male district leader out of the Bronx, New York. Welcome to the panel, our weekly panel. I would love to introduce our guest of today. Joining us is Dr. Maurice Franklin, Doctor of Public Administration, former executive staffer at SCLC and co-founder of the NBJC. Dr. Franklin is running for district leader in Harlem against Charlie Rangel. Welcome, Dr. Franklin. Before we get started, Dr. Franklin, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll turn it back over to Walter, and we can start this town hall with the panel. Dr. Franklin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the invitation to talk about myself and my platform. You are correct. I do have a long history in social justice and social inequities in African American communities. I'd like to think of myself in much of the way that Dr. Leon Sullivan thought about apartheid in South Africa in terms of the Sullivan principles. I've been thinking about those same things in terms of the Black community and how we can kind of reinvest in our community and rebuild African American community. So have been singularly focused on our community. Most of the work in my life, in my adult life, is involved around that. You mentioned SCLC. I was executive staffer to Dr. Joseph Lowry at Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am the founder of the National Black Justice Coalition, which is a national African American LGBT social justice organization focused on our community and social inequities. I live here in the Harlem community. I'm an adjunct professor of public administration and public policy online currently at Cal State Northridge, where I'm teaching teach courses on ethics and professionalism and public policy. I live in Harlem community, have lived here for over 25 years. Involved in everything from church to the Masonic community, from my fraternity to the neighborhoods and blocks that I live and walk on. So I'm intimately involved with my community on a global level, on a national level, and here in Harlem, in the village of Harlem where I live, I'm completely invested in making sure that we have a community to come back to for those that have left, and that we have a strong community for those who are living in the community. So I'm running for district leader, 70 Part B that you mentioned earlier against the Honorable Congressman Charles Rangel.
Yes.
I'm happy to talk about what it means to be a district leader. It's not paid. It's an elected position, but it's a not paid position. It's a perfunctory role. I represent the Democratic Party in Manhattan if I'm elected. And as an elected position, I have some responsibilities that include having a voice in the say of who gets elected to both at our judges in terms of civil, supreme, and surrogate judges. The democratic process is a nomination process to those, and so the district leader has some influence in shaping our criminal justice system and our penal system through the how they support and nominate judges to the bench. So. I hope, to be able to bring around some change. I honor and respect all that Charlie Rangel stands for. But I remember a time when Charlie Rangel ran against somebody named Adam Clayton Powell.
Yes.
And, at the time, they didn't think he, was deserving of that or perhaps not even qualified. So it's been done before,
Right.
And so, the sun sets on all of us at some point in our life and in our careers. And so I honor Congressman Rangel's work, and I'm looking forward to turning the page and, for a new generation of leaders in our community. I think that we all called here for a certain time on earth, and that we have a responsibility to replace ourselves. And so I'm hoping and I'm wishing that the voters in Harlem will see me as an option and choice, and a strong choice for new leadership.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Dr. Franklin. We appreciate you. So, Walter, we can get started with our panel.
Okay, but
You ready, Dr. Franklin? We got a tough panel.
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
you
I'm
ready? All right, but let me start off. Let me start off first by, again, thanking you for joining us. And this is a town hall type format, which I think you would be familiar with. And I'm going to kick off the questions by asking you first, how many candidates are in the field, or is it just you head to head versus Mr. Rangel?
Well, right now, Mr. Latham, we're going through the petition process, and so that opened up on the 2nd of March. And so from March 2nd through March 25th, everybody in Manhattan and New York City, we're all focused on getting names on petitions for support to get our names on the ballot. So we won't know anything until after the 25th. And so at this point, I haven't heard of a lot of people running for 70 Part B, the male leader. That's Congressman Rangel. So as far as I know, there could be others on the ballot after the 25th. But I have declared my candidacy for 70 Part B, and I live in the neighborhood, walk the neighborhoods every day, and so at this point, I'm just focused on my campaign and getting the message out to the community to let them know what district leader is.
I understand. All right, how confident are you that you will meet the criterion for?
I'm confident that we'll get the number of required signatures on the petition. I'm confident that we'll meet that first hurdle of getting the number of petitions. 400 is a required number. And so we're out there. We'll be out in the streets in Harlem tomorrow and all day on Sunday. And every day the weather is nice, we'll be out there, even considering the COVID precautions. We want to make sure that we're still respecting those precautions and safety. But we're out there asking people for their vote, meaning that we're asking them to support us just to get our names on the petition, get our names on the ballot. So I'm asking for people's vote.
Excellent. Okay. All right, let's go to the panel. All right, guys. Yes. It's been a week. It seems like yesterday. But anyway, I want to start. Let's start with Ernest. Ernest.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you have questions. for
Yeah,
Dr.
well,
Franklin.
one, I'm still grappling, trying to make sure I have a better understanding of what the male district leader actually does. But mentioning that you needed only 400 signatures, my first question would be, is how many would you actually represent, or what becomes your jurisdiction of responsibility? And then two, you also made mention about the fact that you have the opportunity of being able to select judges. Well, with the impending investigations that are going on the former president, will any of your influence, even though it may not be directly in your jurisdiction, with your counterparts or peers, would you have any influence on how that happens, or are there any current cases or investigations that would actually be implicated within your jurisdiction in relation to that high profile case?
So that's a great question, and let me just clarify. The 70th Assembly District represents Harlem. Okay, so the 70th Assembly District represents Manhattan, Upper Harlem, and so those are local judges that we're talking about in terms of selection of local judges at the Attorney General level or at the. So in answer to your question around those federal charges against potential federal or state charges against the president, the ex-president of the United States, no, the district judge, the judges for appointment would not have any influence at that level, no.
Well, the other question is, what is your constituency capacity? Like, how many do you actually represent?
In Harlem itself, the number of elected and the number of voters in Harlem are well over 200,000 voters in the Harlem community. How many people will come out to vote? I don't know. At the district leader level, over the past few years, there's been a small turnout because it hasn't been in a general election, and so this time we're dealing with a general election. We're looking at both city council races, mayor race. We have ranked choice voting going on this year. So it's a potential that there's a different number to measure and quantify this year. So I don't think that what's happened in the past is going to indicate what's happening on June 22nd.
Yeah, I want to ask
Walter,
you about yes.
Walter, this is Gene.
Yes,
Just to further answer Chris's question, for some reason, and I won't say it's unbeknownst to me, but for some reason in New York, in particular, on odd years, there's a lesser turnout at the voting polls, and sometimes in upwards of 50% less, because most of the bigger elections fall on even years. Like last year, you had president, Congress, state senate, assembly, district leader. And then, the next time that, we fall on an even year in 22, it starts with the governor, the gubernatorial race. So for those reasons given, there are always bigger turnouts on even years as opposed to odd years, because for the majority of elections that take place on odd years, it's always local elections. And for some reason, there's voter fatigue and they don't turn out for local elections. So that's the histrionics behind it all. And I hope I answered your question, brother.
All right, and I think District Leader Edwards is absolutely right about that. The one unique thing different about it this time is that we have a member in the Harlem community who's running for controller. And so Senator Brian Benjamin is running for controller, whom I support. And I think that's going to drive the numbers out in Harlem. We also have people running for Council District 9, Bill Perkins' seat. That will also drive out the number. And we also have Attorney General race. So I think those will drive the numbers and so we have new voters that have moved into the Harlem community. So all of those things being said, I think that we can expect a large turnout in June. We don't know who that turnout will come from. Will it be traditional voters that come out in off years who voted in the presidential race? Is that enough? Or will these be new voters who are coming to the polls because they always historically vote? And so if we're just dealing with the historic numbers of people who always vote, we could be looking at a low turnout because it is an off-cycle year, not a presidential election.
Okay. All right, Dr. Franklin, I do have a question though. Now, I may sound a little dumb. Now, the upcoming election is in June. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that a primary election, or is that the election?
This is the election. It's ranked choice. Again, this is the first. This will be the first election that New York State is doing ranked choice. So it'll be ranked choice, which means you have your first, your second, and your third choice, and for all races except for attorney general. So it's possible that we won't have to have a runoff because there will be based on the rankings, a person can reach the 51% threshold just based on ranked choices. So I think that also is an opportunity for those voices that perhaps people look at as qualified or competent or effective emerging leaders.
Right.
And so it's a possibility that somebody like a Dr. Franklin could be someone first choice and second choice, and maybe have more second choice votes and overcome someone like a Congressman Rangel, former Congressman Rangel. So I'm optimistic based on all of that, the new formula that and walking the streets of Harlem as I do on a regular basis, that I have a shot.
Right. Okay. I was trying to grasp this ranked choice voting, and I still can't grasp it, even though you covered it a little bit. But for the audience's information, so they'll be informed. Could you just explain the impact? The only thing I know, I do know that for newcomers, people that are new, running against incumbents and things of that nature, it kind of puts them on a level playing field. It's more to their advantage. But could you just step through this ranked choice again? Just for the benefit of the audience. Thank you.
Mr. Latham, thank you so much. And I think that what you just described is a perfect way to describe it. It gives everyone an opportunity, and it gives even a minority voice an opportunity to be heard and for people to support. And so what will happen is voters will be able to select their first, their second, and their third choices in that order. And so a candidate could receive, maybe 30% of the first choices and 90% of the second choices, and if nobody reaches, and if they reach over 51% of the support, that candidate could be elected to office. So it's really designed to, it's budgetary, so it creates the opportunity to not have rerun elections, but it also gives opportunity through that ranking to select for the natural candidate to still be selected first. Some states have already started to implement that in some counties, and they've seen it seem to be effective in those locations. I'm still waiting to see how that works here in New York City with such a diverse population. I'm curious how that might work in Harlem with the emerging population of new people coming into the community and sort of the established indigenous community that lives here. So I'm curious about how ranked choice will work. And so we'll get a chance to see the evidence of that in June.
Okay. Any more questions on ranked choice? All right. So I'm done with ranked choice.
So I got a question.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, no, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I just want to say congratulations, Dr. Franklin, on having the courage to run and get involved in public service for your community. And I also want to commend you for having the guts to run up against somebody with a distinguished record as Charles Rangel. I know that might be a daunting task. I got to ask you, with the gentrification that's going on in Harlem, and with Charlie Rangel having so many, let's say, connections and friends in high places, what distinguishes you from him and how you're going to help the people of Harlem, particularly the people that have been there for the long haul, that have seen the ups and downs of Harlem?
Well, my old preacher friend would have probably tell me the story of David and Goliath. So, I'm a believer in even the smallest man and the smallest idea that something good can come from that. So that's the first thing that I believe. I believe in myself. I believe in my skills. And I believe in the passion that I have for the community. I believe the community sees that. They know me. I serve on Harlem Hospital's Community Advisory Board. I'm an active member of the community, have been an active member of the community since I've lived in Harlem. So the work and the fruit of my labor are completely clear and evidence to the people who live in the community, number one. I'm also, I want to just, I'm also concerned about how we elevate and groom leadership in African American community in general. During my time at SCLC, I used to ask as a much younger person, I used to ask Dr. Lowry about new leadership in social justice movement, and he always said a ram was going to come out of the bush. And every time he said that, I would just look, and he would grin and laugh at me. But I just don't think that's how we need to select leaders in our community. We should be more intentional about preparing and training and the next generation of leaders. And so, that being said, that hasn't always happened or always served our community well in the way that we're doing it. We do have to be concerned about the mix that's moving into the community, but we need to be concerned in a way that our cultures are still respected, and that those that come into the community respect and honor, the history of the community. Absolutely. Does that mean that Harlem can't be greater? Certainly, Harlem can be greater, but I'm just like Baldwin and Garvey and all the other greats. There's such a strong part of my history and my identity that Harlem wouldn't be Harlem without me or all of that history. So it's important that we preserve our history and our culture, and that those that come in that are new, whether they come from the South or they come from South Manhattan or Midwest, right, or South Manhattan, that they understand and respect the culture, and that's the first thing, the cultural knowledge and competency of learning who we are and embracing our culture. We will evolve together, but embrace our culture and don't destroy it and don't try to remove it.
I want to just piggyback on that real quick. Because you're running against Charles Rangel, who is distinguished, long career of service, right? We want to be respectful of that career. But we also, understand and recognize that it's a new time, new age in Harlem. And you got a lot of younger people out there who are invested in voting now, coming off this last election. So considering some of the things that happened with Mr. Rangel at the end of his tenure, will you try to be mindful of being a little respectful without stepping into that or bringing any of that up? Or will it help you? Or do you think that would hurt you if you if you came up against him in a debate or something?
Well, I doubt that in the history, I don't know that there have been any district leader debates, because again, it's an elected position, but it's not a paid position. And so in that regard, but I honor Congressman Rangel's career. He's had a historic career as a congressperson, and I have no reason to sully his reputation or his career. I understand what happened and all of those things, but no, I would hope that someone like Congressman Rangel, he has influence and power about those decisions that district leaders make as a former congressperson with a historic career. I mean, does he really need to be the district leader? I would ask someone at his level, yes, and at his seniors. Is it important for him to be district leader, or would it be important for him to begin to help shape what the new district leaders of Harlem look like? I think that his influence is even greater on that level, helping to prepare and groom the next generation of leaders, which is something that he should already have been engaged in. So I don't consider myself running against Congressman Rangel. I'm running for Harlem.
I got you. Very good answer. Thank you.
That's great. Greg, I think you have a question. You can ask your question to Mr. Franklin if you like. Are you on mute, Greg?
He's not online.
Okay, I see him online. Well, he had a question. With the rise in voter participation in the 2020 elections, what unique approach do you feel you need to take to make the voice and concerns of the people heard at the city, state, and federal levels, Mr. Franklin?
I always think we need to expand the voter base. I always think that we need to be engaged in voter education and participation. That district leaders actually have that unique role and opportunity because we're at the ground level of seeing voters on the streets every day. So getting people involved in community boards, encouraging people to participate in the democratic process, the school boards at their local level, the Manhattan Boroughs Board. So getting participants to engage and think about the personal as political, and everything that affects them, in some way, and is sort of measured, monitored, and policies are set, in local and state and federal governments. And so to engage voters early, meaning at the high school level, getting them civically engaged, to continue and encouraging and promoting those leadership, helping them develop those kinds of skills that will 100 years from now be well served in our community. And so we have to be thinking about leadership 100 years from now, not just what's happening right now, not what's happening just right now for me, but how do we shape leaders for the next generation and the next century. So for me, that means engaging, citizens who've never participated in an election cycle, who've never participated, but who are concerned about issues, and finding a platform and a forum for them to discuss and to get those things out into the public, and helping them develop their own forms of advocacy, be it calls, writing letters, attending meetings, organizing their block, the housing building they live in, the apartment complex, giving people strategies to engage in the process. Yeah, I was a young voter. My mother started. I started going to the polls and voting when my mother was. I was probably 9 years old. It was the first time I walked into an election booth, and I did it every year with my mother. So by the time I was 18, it was a no-brainer for me.
Right.
I was involved and active because that's what my mom did.
Right.
So just find ways to engage people where they are and to help them make decisions that best suit them and their family and their community.
Great.
Hey, Michelle, I would like to add on to that.
Sure.
I know that Dr. Franklin has to be rather judicious with his language because he's the candidate. But since I'm already in office, I can say whatever I want to say. To harp on what he was talking about with the young people. He's talking about mentorship, and we have to look at the history and all the accomplishments of Congressman Rangel at age 91, going into age 92.
Right.
He should be a mentor to a gentleman like Dr. Franklin, as opposed to being an opponent. See, that's what he should be doing in the golden years of his life. Not trying to run, but trying to mold and shape, and like Dr. Franklin has asserted, making sure that the next 100 years in Harlem, that we're on the right track and we're growing. And with that, I'll go back on mute.
I appreciate that because I was always curious. There's no age cap for this. Like, he's 91 years old. They don't have a gap like where.
I'm a firm believer that as long as you can run the race, run the race. But I think there are different ways to run the race. In a person that has influence, use your social power. Use it how best for you and how best for the community. So that's a question for Congressman Rangel. But for me, I certainly I want to be able to live a productive life and to contribute until to the last breath. And so I would never take that opportunity away from anybody else because of their age.
Mm-hmm. Ernest, I think Ernest had something to say earlier. Walter, Ernest, you want to get out what you had to say earlier?
Yeah. So the constant theme, as far as what I've been hearing, is that Dr. Franklin, you're wanting to be able to provide avenues of approach for younger voters, being able to create mentorships and opportunities for young people to get involved into leadership. So under your previous positions at the SCLC and the NBJC, did you create those opportunities while you were there, and what were the results of them? And then furthermore, you had made mention. I mean, obviously, it's known that this is not a paid position, and you're talking about being able to groom leadership for additional opportunities. So, what is this more beneficial for you to become the male district leader, and if not, then what is the benefit to Harlem for you becoming the male district leader?
So there's a lot of questions in there. So I'm gonna. So you asked me for an example first of how I, benefited and replaced myself. So let me start with a couple of organizations that I founded. I'm the founder of the National Black Justice Coalition, which is a social justice and civil rights organization. I'm now what's called an emeritus board member, which means that I replaced myself, 5 years after founding an organization that had no money and just was rich in ideas to a fully functional, staffed, and governed and run organization based in Washington, D.C. And so in that regard, I think that that's an example that I'm a founder, a leader, but not running an organization. I think that for me, that's what I call the good side of governance, of organizations and CEOs who, especially in public sector, who see themselves as a conduit to change and social change and whatever that they may see as the greater good in our community. But they don't necessarily see themselves there running that day to day forever. I felt like it was important to identify new leaders. And we did that at the organization. We brought on a whole set of new leaders and emerging leaders from all over the country that are connected and plugged into that organization. So that's something I'm extremely proud of. And mentoring here in Harlem, if I'm elected, to this position, then those duties and responsibilities, by the Manhattan Democratic leadership are signed. So those are things that we're responsible for in terms of attending the annual Democratic meeting that happens in the county, voting on that for the Manhattan district leader, a meeting around the judges and making recommendations on that. So those are the primary responsibilities of the district leader. Those things that I mentioned around voter education, voter participation, citizen engagement, and mentoring, those are things that I do every day, a part of my passion. Those are the things I think are most important in terms of district leader. It can't just be about me. It can't be about me or whatever power I'm able to amass because of that. It has to be about what I can transfer to my community to help new leaders to empower and to engage the community. I can only be strong if I have a strong community. And so I think some of the examples that we see in terms of poor governance and poor leadership, or leaders that have gotten so far from the community that they've kind of forgotten who elected them and how they got into those positions. And so it's completely, for me, I have to maintain my groundness, is to maintain being grounded, is to continue to be able to walk in the streets of my community, to talk to people, to understand the day-to-day challenges of the community that I live in. So will it make a difference if I'm not elected? I can't answer that question. I think I'd make a difference being elected for certain. I think that those issues that I'm important about and grounding those issues in how I feel about Harlem will make a difference on the policy level and at the state level. Those things make a difference when you're sending the person from your community who is conscious. W.B. Du Bois talked about this notion that people would go out and get the talent and skills and education and come back into our community to raise the nation. Well, I have been passionately and intimately living that experience my entire life. And so I'm only asking the community to reward me by voting me as district leader to continue to do what I've been doing in the community, to elevate those issues that are important to them, and that I am their mouthpiece, and that I'm mirroring to leadership what's happening in my community. So I'm only asking them to let me reflect that at the level that at a higher platform level. I'm asking for that reward. I'm asking for their vote.
Okay.
You know what,
Now,
Walter? I would like to take it. Walter, I'd like to take it a step further. District leader, assembly, and United States Congress, we have to run for re-election every 2 years. So I understand everything that Dr. Franklin said as far as being grounded, but I can tell you, as an elected district leader, you know what really keeps me grounded? The
What's
same
that?
way they voted, the same way people voted me in, 2 years later, they can vote me out. So you're forced to do the work, even if you're lazy. Even if you're lazy, you're forced to do the work, because if you don't, you only have 2 years to get it right. And trust me, uh, uh, voters can be fair weather friends. I'll say that.
Okay. Okay. All right. I do want to ask you, Dr. Franklin, about the issue with segregated schools. I understand New York is known for having the most segregated schools in the country. Is that something that you would like to tackle as district leader?
So that's a policy position. I certainly read the study, the report about New York and segregation in the school systems, that they've become more segregated in the last 20 years, 25 years. Um, I certainly believe in local homeschooling. I'm a proponent of that. I certainly believe in cultural diversity. But I do think that there's some importance around the value of seeing teachers and principals and community leaders that look like you, that go to the same church that you attend, and that that you can look to as role models and mentors. And so, what we want is our school systems, the schools, to have the same resources and effective leadership within those programs. And so, for me, I embrace diversity, but I want our students in our community to have the same opportunities in education as someone who lives in upstate or someone living on Long Island. So whether that be culturally diverse, integrated or segregated school, I don't know the answer to that. But I have my ideas about how that has worked in the last 50 years. There's lots of evidence to see what's happened since segregation in our communities. And evidence would suggest that, in some categories, we are not performing as well. So I'll leave that to the social scientists. I'm a social scientist, but I'll leave that for another conversation. But I would say evidence suggests that, that we want schools to be well-funded and have the same opportunity, whether they be in a poor neighborhood or a neighborhood that has lots of resources.
Okay, now let me just clarify specifically what I'm asking you. Take, for instance, the High School of Science in the Bronx, okay? And a lot of minority kids can't get in. The more privileged people or students get in. I'm coming from the more privileged families. So that is that's where I want to clarify. Would you engage in trying to do something about that? In terms of the enrollment policy of some of these private schools, not private schools, they're just specialized schools.
Well, I haven't thought much about that. I'm aware of the high school and technology, but so I haven't thought about that. But I certainly think that that the issues around enrollment, there probably needs to look into that and to see how it can make sure that it accommodates those that want to get in. But I haven't put much thought into that particular issue.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do think that's a very important issue for everybody. All right. Okay, so let's go with Greg. Is Greg there? Greg available?
Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah.
What do you have for Dr. Franklin?
Dr. Franklin, is good having you on here, and I'm glad that you like we said earlier are stepping in there to take on that battle. But one of the things I'm concerned with in local politics is the rise of this partisan politics. Do you see a unique way to cut through the partisan politics and combine sometimes, if needed, with people of any party to do what's best for the community?
Oh, when you say that, I'm thinking about apartheid and how the government had a whole Truth and Reconciliation Commission before they even began to create a new government. And so I think we're at a place right now in our culture and in our country where we need to deal with the facts and part of that is that we need to deal with some truth and move forward. And so I do think people are in their camps right now, and it may take something greater to move that forward. But right now, an idea would have to come with some truth from those that have been in opposition to sort of the large democratic governing process. I mean, what's happened in our country over the last 4 years, in particular what's happened over the last 6 months since November 3rd, it's just been unbelievable. And to talk about any kind of collaboration, we need to talk about, we need to get out of the alternate worlds that we live in some cases. We need to deal with facts and data as being the same. And we need to have some truth and reconciliation around what really just happened in our government, what happened in our country, what happened in some of these elections, what's going on around the racism. The question is usually focused to us, Black folks, get over things, pull it together, get over it. But the fact is that there's some things that have happened in the last 9 months that we really need as a country to come clean with in order to move forward. So for me, we've got to deal with truth and reconciliation before we can ever get to healing.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Walter, I want to piggyback off of that.
Yes.
Because I think, part of what Greg was asking is not just the partisanship from Democrat or Republican, but the partisanship that's within inside of the party. Whether or not will you be a person for the people, or will you be more swayed by the party? And I think even to Chris's point, with someone like a Congressman Charlie Rangel, who is, very much a part of the, establishment, and very well connected, will you be able to maintain your integrity and represent the people of Harlem, or will you be representing the Democratic Party?
Well, my work history demonstrates that I work for and on behalf of those that have suffered inequities, and so I've never been a part of the Democratic Party at that level. I've always worked probably on the more progressive side in those issues that really related to the African American community. Housing, healthcare, education, jobs. And so that's been my focus, and those inequities that have created sort of those poverty issues in our community. So I don't know that would make me lockstep with the party, but it would certainly keep me in lockstep with the issues and concerns in my community.
Okay. All right, Chris.
Hey, I had to take myself off. I was muted. I like the answer just now because I was kind of going there, and with all of this partisan politics going on right now, and they use this cancel culture as an excuse to get away with some of the things that they're doing, and they use that as a threat against people. So I just wanted to, you just answered it basically. You're going to stand firm on your policies and the things that you want to do for the people, and not be intimidated by this so-called cancel culture, which doesn't exist, because, if you're doing something wrong to the people, they have a right to change their mind and go in a different direction. And the people who refuse to change, who are rooted in all of this foolishness that's going on the past 4 years with the previous administration, and cancel culture is an excuse for them. Oh, you see, if you say something different, they're willing to cancel you. So I just want you to, I want you to know that you got to stand firm. If you believe in something, you got to stand up to it. And if it's for the people, you stand strong with the people, and don't concern yourself with the cancel culture, because it's not real. It's like you said, it's an alternate reality for people who just don't want to change.
One of the lessons I learned, and I thank you, so that was beautiful, first of all, and you're right. Mm-hmm. Cancel culture has been weaponized now against Black folks. It has been weaponized by the right. It's using it to weaponize the language and using it against Democrats and Black folks. It's important to me to be a leader in my community, to have the pulse of my community, to also have a vision about where we go as in terms of the future. Visionary leaders lead the community, but you can't get over the hill on the other side and the community not see you. So it's important for me to stay grounded and close to the community. And I don't necessarily, I'm not so much invested in, what the larger party or what the opposition is saying, what we're saying about what I do or how I lead. I consider myself the people's prince when it comes to leadership and my voice. I represent the people.
Hey, Walter, this is Gene.
Yeah, Gene.
Yeah, I would just like to add on to the question from the first brother. By trade, Dr. Franklin, in his introduction of himself, he said he is an adjunct professor at Cal State Northridge, right? I don't know if anybody's ever been to Northern California, but the majority of the students that attend that school are white.
Oh, yeah.
So Dr. Franklin is an expert in interacting with people of all ethnicities and nationalities. Now, to answer Greg's question directly, I know Greg is down there in North Carolina where the barbecue is way better than New York City, and they make some of the best corn liquor in America. Don't ask me how I know. Up here, Greg.
We need the evidence on that,
Gene. Greg, up here in New York City, of the 5 boroughs, the only borough that is red is Staten Island. Everything else is blue. That's why when Walter asked the question previously, is the primary the race or does it go to a general election? And Dr. Franklin so assertively answered, that's the race. The primary is always the race in New York City because normally there are no Republicans running for office within the other 4 boroughs, which is the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, right? It's only Staten Island that, and New York County, Manhattan, New York County. It's only Staten Island that has a strong Republican opposition. To answer your question, brother, about the bipartisanship and the splits, it's the same way that the Republican Party is split in half. Excuse the sirens. I live in the South Bronx and I'm outside. Yeah, somebody got shot. I see an ambulance.
Oh my goodness.
I'll find out tonight on 11 o'clock news.
No, thank you. Thank you.
But
my
no,
home.
But no, you have the Republican Party is split in half. It's fractured. You have the Trumpism, and then you have the traditional GOP. With the Democratic Party, you have the moderates like myself, and I'm not going to speak for Dr. Franklin, but you have moderates like myself, and then you have what is known as the Democratic Socialists of America. That's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some of the other I'm not calling them radical left. I'm talking about how they've been defined in the news media. They're the radical left, and their champion is Bernie Sanders. And as you notice, Bernie Sanders has defected from the Democratic Party and he's joined the Independent Party. So yes, we all have a problem. Republicans have their problems with the Trumpsters and the traditional GOP like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. And then the Democrats have their own problems with the Joe Bidens and the Barack Obamas versus the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We all have problems. So I hope that answers your question, Greg.
Yeah, I wasn't, coming from the perspective of so much, I understand, the New York political landscape from being, a native New Yorker and living there for 45 years of my life. And the barbecue is a little better down here in North Carolina.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm more concerned with navigating, through the groups that you just mentioned. And sometimes, we know that, certain politicians get so stuck on, that tag that they lose, sight of what the people want. And, Dr. Franklin definitely explained exactly how he'd be able to navigate that. So I was more concerned with that than rather, beholden to those demographic makeups.
Actually, I got a question. I know we had cleared the air about not, trying to sully the name of Congressman Rangel. And I definitely understand the premise behind that. However, what is going to be capturing headlines over the next few weeks and probably a few months will be the overwhelming call for the resignation of your current governor. When posed with questions that are immersed in tremendous controversy, will you be able to be honest in your responses to your constituents, or will you find a convenient way to pivot out of addressing a particular question?
I've been very clear, and that's a very good question. I called for the governor's resignation a couple of days ago, so I'll be very clear about that right now. I do think it's important. So for me, the position is not more important than my personal ethics and my code of conduct and behavior. So I may not get elected again, but I certainly during that time that I am elected will certainly speak truth to power. And so the political positioning for me is not about the next run for office. It's about staying engaged to my community, engaging the community on those issues, explaining to them why I make decisions. And my decision-making process includes my constituents. I think that when I speak, that I'm speaking on behalf and for the people where I live. So I will have no problem speaking truth to power. I'll be certainly calculated about how I use my words, but in terms of the decisions that I make, I won't calculate whether I make a decision to do something because it's politically expedient. Example, I was on the streets the other day, wanted to sign, somebody asked me asked us do something. They said, well, I can't sign your petition because you're running against my opponent. I said, but you're running against somebody we're trying to get support from. I said, really? So you can't even sign my petition because you're trying to get support from them. So for me, ethically, all of that is a mess. But I stand firm on the belief that, I'm convicted of the decisions that I make.
All right. Any further questions from the panel? Before I go to my list, I got a whole list for you, Dr. Franklin. But anyway, I just. All right. I just want to know what you've spoken and you may have covered some of these things, but what do you think distinguishes you from the other candidates? And I know right away you wouldn't compare yourself to Charlie Rangel. That's not there. But other people would step in. What makes you unique where I would say, okay, I'm going to vote for Dr. Franklin because I know he can do the job?
Well, beyond the fact that I'm a good-looking black man with a bald head and a beautiful smile that everybody see in the community, so that's the first thing. That's the first thing that everybody's going to say. Dr. Franklin is a handsome man, number one. Number two is that, I'm that in all spaces that I've been in Harlem, that I always bring the people's voice into the room. That is what I'm distinguished by in all the committees that I serve on, is that I'm representing the community. And I'm a fierce fighter. That I'm a fierce fighter for the things that I love and the people that I love. That's my people. And so that's what is going to distinguish me, not differently from Congressman Rangel. I want to hope that he meets up, that he also has those characteristics. But that I'm a new face, that I have lots of energy, and that they see me. They see me on the streets all the time. That they see me and they know me and they feel me. They can feel my heartbeat. That's to me, that's the most effective leadership is someone who are doing it for the right reasons. I'm representing the community because I believe I have the skill set, that I've been academically prepared. The community sent me to school, that I came back to the community with those skills and those talents, ready to go to war on behalf of my community. I think that's what I look for in any leader. That's what I look for in any leader. And that's who I am.
Okay. Any further questions from the panel?
I want to chime in and say, I think I wish you well. You know, you sound like your heart is in it, and you're looking forward to the challenge. I think it's a good thing that Charles Rangel is in the race. Not because I think he should win. I think fresh eyes, a different approach, but he brings attention to the race. So that could be something that we could take out of it that's good. I think Harlem needs to go in a different direction. I think right now the political atmosphere is filled with a lot of young people with good energy, good ideas, and we need to continue with that. So I wish you well, good luck, and I hope everything works out for you.
I appreciate it. I take those warm and those well wishes, and all the energy from the questions on this call. They will continue to ground me throughout this entire campaign. But more than that, they will continue to ground me even after June 22nd. Just a quick thank you for allowing me to be on this platform today. I appreciate it. I want to say a great word about my dear friend and brother, Gene Edwards, district leader. I just love him. He's a brother that is, they say it's truly a revolution. Black men loving black men is a revolutionary act. And what he has done to show his support for me is what I call black men loving black men. It's a revolution when we do that. So, Brother Latham, thank you for this platform, and all of the distinguished panelists. Thank you for the thoughtful questions, and I look forward to keep you up on my progress.
Thank you. We will be following it very closely, very closely. All right, yes. I just want our audience, if you have not started following the Walt Weekly podcast, please do so. We would appreciate it. And we have, I'm gonna turn it over to Michelle, but we have some exciting shows coming up, guys. So with that said, I just want to again thank Dr. Franklin and wish you the best. And we will be watching. And hopefully you'll come back and let us know after the election. Okay, and you'll be a winner, right? And I'm gonna turn it over to Michelle.
Yes, thank you, Walter. Thank you, Dr. Franklin. We appreciate you coming on, taking the time out, your busy schedule. Thank you, Gene, for bringing him in. We do have some exciting shows coming up. Next week, Wednesday, we have Marie Claire Gerard, who is an opera singer for Women's History Month. We will publish her interview next week, Wednesday. Next week, Friday, we will also have some amazing women coming on for Women's History Month. We look forward to having everyone there. Thank you to our panel, our weekly panel guests. We appreciate everyone, our audience. And please follow us on IG, The Walt Weekly, Facebook, The Walt Weekly Podcast, www.thewaltweekly.com. We are on all streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Pandora, and other streaming platforms. Have an awesome weekend. Stay blessed. Stay safe. Good night.
Good night. Stay blessed. Thank you very much.